energy. We're talking about energy today.
We're talking about energy today. Remember when we used to record these episodes at night at like 7 p.m.?
Yeah.
But because we would talk for an hour before each episode, it was actually 8 p.m. Now we record at 11 p.m. and it's actually noon now.
I mean,
not
11 a.m. Yeah, we do it
11
later
a.m.
now.
No, we do it even later. No, we record it at 11 a.m., but it is noon because we keep spending an hour talking about
anything,
YouTube and AI and everything about the world.
It's the highlight of my week, so it's fine.
Yeah, we record in the mornings. Are you caffeinated? Are you awake?
I am always caffeinated. That's my secret, Cap. That's the thing, is that like everybody has a relationship with caffeine, and I'm always curious about what people's are, because I feel like you can learn a lot about somebody by their relationship with caffeine. So Scott, what is your relationship to this wonderful brain drug?
Growing up, I did not like coffee at all, really. I grew up in the South, so I really liked sweet tea, but that was more sugar than caffeine. So as I got older, though, I definitely got into coffee, and then I pulled away from coffee and got back into hot breakfast teas.
Yeah, you're a fan. You're now a known tea figure.
I'm a known tea drinker these days. The weather's getting warmer, so I am drinking colder, like green tea beverages in the morning. I like batch make some green tea, put it in little glass bottles that I store in my fridge, and I mix that with a little bit of, you get some green tea, you get some pineapple juice, you get some coconut milk. That's a good it tastes like you're on a beach every day of the year when you drink that.
That does sound nice.
It's so good. So that's my caffeine. That's what I'm doing right now for caffeine.
That sounds very responsible.
What's your relationship with caffeine?
It's not good.
Not good? I
drink an amount of coffee that would probably be considered irresponsible, to the point where I am numbed to the point where I now have a coffee at like 7 p.m. to get me through till 10.
There you go.
But that comes from the fact that I spent the last almost 15 months and change with a very irregular sleeping pattern, and to this day probably get about 6 hours of sleep a night. So
that's not really your fault, though, and you're dancing around it, but there is a person to blame for that.
Yes. There's a little gremlin that lives in our house. That's
a little tiny gremlin who just showed up,
who decided,
like, take care of me, feed me, pay attention to me.
He decided that 5:30, for example, this morning was time to wake up.
Yeah. I have to ask, we both have ADHD. I take Adderall, which I know you shouldn't really drink too much caffeine when you're on Adderall. I don't, does caffeine affect any sort of regimen that you're on? This is an extremely personal question that you do not have to answer.
I'm not on Adderall or any sort of, what's it called? Any sort of stimulant medication. Yeah. I'm on for ADHD, I'm on a sort of off-label use of Wellbutrin, which is typically an anxiety drug, an anti-anxiety medication. So
gotcha.
Makes you real sweaty.
It sure does. I was on that for a little bit.
Yeah, but basically I'm on that mostly because blood pressure reasons and stuff like that. But anyways,
yes.
I'm still a terrible abuser of caffeine, to the point where like I coffee all the time, and then every so often, if I like need like sort of nitrous or nitro in the engine, I buy something like a sugar-free Monster or something like that. Just
nice.
Like when I'm like, I can't, like, this is literally like I'm redlining the engines. I just need to burn through 4 hours where I can actually do something, and that's when I do that.
Can I say, I used to know people, and I'm sure there are people who are listening who are also like this, but so I'm not like, I don't want to judge or anything, but I definitely used to know people who did not like the taste of coffee, didn't really care for tea. So their morning beverage was they would go walk to like a convenience store that was close by and pick up like a sugar-free Monster. And that was what they drank every single morning.
God, that's a lot.
That's a lot to wake up to.
Yeah. I will say that I'm coming under the conclusion that I think convenience stores are bad. I think they're almost like, if you think about it, what are the things that they mostly sell? It's cigarettes, unhealthy snack food, and lottery tickets. It's literally all vices.
That is true. In In defense, though, of the snack foods, sometimes that's all you have if you're in the middle of a food desert. See, I'm going to make you feel bad by being like, hey, people rely on those sometimes, Tristan.
Yeah, well, maybe instead of convenience stores, there should be groceries.
I agree.
But it does feel like every time I'm there, I'm like, wow, every one of these things in the store is basically an unhealthy addictive substance or practice that is exploiting the dopamine loops in people's brains to get them do something that's not good for them.
That's true. Sometimes they have donuts. Love me a donut.
Yeah, it's sugar or salt or fat or lottery tickets, which for people who have gambling issues is a problem. It also is just a tax on people who don't know math, and cigarettes, which I think is like the fact that cigarettes are still legal is just baffling.
Wild to me.
Yeah. And of course, caffeine in unhealthy amounts.
So why are we talking about caffeine? Why did you want to talk about caffeine?
Because today we're talking about energy on this podcast that's called It's Probably Not Aliens.
Menergy. Remember that?
Yeah. It's this
old
flavor's
school
gun.
internet that's probably, I don't want to rewatch it now because it's probably problematic.
But like a jet fighter full of biceps, we are hot and ready to talk about this podcast today.
Yes. What is this podcast? This is a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens, where we debunk ancient astronaut theory in the History Channel show Ancient Aliens. We're going through it, and there's a lot to talk about. But I don't know anything about it because my name is Scott Nicewander, and I'm the host that knows nothing. I am drinking one of my delicious green tea drinks, though.
And my name, just looking it up real quick so you don't want to get anything wrong.
Yeah. Let's double check.
My name is Tristan Johnson, and I am brought to you by guaranine or methylbromine or 1,3,7-trimethylxanthine or 7-methylophylline or thiene, which are all other names for caffeine.
Great. I thought you were looking up what your name was.
My name is Tristan Johnson, and I somehow do this every week. And
you say somehow, but we've established how. It's through the power of caffeine and through the power of energy.
Through the power of caffeine and not sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do this. In 20 years.
Don't do it.
In 20 years, I'll be like on my seventh heart, and you guys will know why I shouldn't have done this. But my name is Tristan Johnson, and I do this. Today, we're talking about energy, and we are sort of we're getting close to the end of the first episode of season 2 of Ancient Aliens with this one.
Oh boy, this is going to take us forever.
Yeah, but we are basically covering in this and the next episode the overall claims that we were talking about with the Puerto Diamarca and Markawasi and the Zone of Silence, which is that they claim that these were all stargates, or that these were places of teleportation or powers. Now, we're going to talk about teleportation and wormholes next week.
Yay.
But this one, we're going to be talking about another word that came up. So this is literally another one of those ones that's based on like 2 sentences of the show.
And we're going to make a whole episode about it.
Yeah. So basically the idea is that on Ancient Aliens, they said that there are locations around the world that have, quote, baffled scientists for years because of the strange phenomenon. Things like the Bermuda Triangle, but also the Zone of Silence and the Gate of the Gods. But some believe that these are portals. Millions of people around the world believe these are
millions of portals around the world.
Yeah, portals or gateways that aliens use to get to Earth. And that, according to Ancient Aliens, the way that these things are powered is through the world grid, which
we've talked about before, which is a geometric pattern of energy that is crossing the globe. And our ancient ancestors knew how to tap into that power to their advantage. And that is what they're using to power these things. There's areas in the world that have vortexes of invisible energies that come together and crisscross the world. Oh.
And it has something to do with geometric shapes. We see things like in Greece, the Pythagorean school believed that there was something called sacred geometry that could, through the power of shapes, create tons of energy. This is one of the fun things. So I have a whole bunch of degrees and stuff like that I never hang up because I don't know. One of the ones I do want to hang up.
Hey, did you know that shapes have also a bunch of degrees because that's how you make shapes? Hey. Anyway,
the one thing I want to hang up is I have, for some reason, I think it's because my parents were cleaning out the house and they're getting rid of the stuff that I didn't think to grab when I moved out to go to college. Like, 13 years ago.
Uh-oh.
But it's a framed graduation certificate for me from kindergarten with stickers about all of the things that I excelled at. And according to that, I know my shapes. So
that's awesome. Man, I'm so proud of you. You know your shapes. Hey, quick, hold on. What's the round one called?
Oh, it's not a triangle.
Nope. You got good. Use your noodle.
It's not a pentagon because pentagon's 5.
Right. Wow, you knew that really early.
I'm gonna say it's a dodecahedron.
We'll smooth it out and say that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Close enough.
Cool. Excellent. So this is like a thing that like the Pythagoreans believed. Because Pythagoras thought that triangles had magic powers or something. And according...
what is it with triangle? Everyone is always with these triangles.
I don't know. Triangles, very important.
Pyramids and Bass Pro Shop.
According to Ancient Aliens, UFO sightings can be found around this world grid, and that they come here to, I guess, like these are like sort of planetary gas stations, because UFOs come here to siphon the energy off our planets. In various places, you might find things like in Europe, they're called ley lines, another episode we did.
Yeah, we've done that.
And the ancient people who built these and harnessed these powers were all tapping into the same energy source, which, according to Ancient Aliens, some theorists are calling geomancy. Harvesting energy from the earth. And that is the topic of today's episode.
Now, obviously, geo, I'm going to break it. I'm going to use my stems. You are good at shapes. I'm good at stems. Geo, earth. Yes. Mancy. See, that's just it.
Read a lot of Nancy Drew comics.
Well, it feels because I know of things like necromancy in like
you're in the
D&D
same thing
and such. Yeah. Is it like sort of like control over or like power over? Is power
magic?
Is power magic? I could have just done that. I didn't think they were gonna do straight magic. I was thinking like, what's like a better, safer word for magic? Like power? But no, it's just magic. All right.
More or less, yeah. So to talk about this, because this is gonna be one where we're gonna be dancing a little bit with words, because geomancy is a real word that has a lot of history. But the thing that
hold on, wait. Is this like earthbending?
Yes, definitely.
Hell
in a lot of ways, it's like earthbending, but in a lot of more accurate ways, it's not.
Oh, okay.
But it is earth magic.
I love it.
So what they're referring to, what they called in the episode geomancy, sounded to me just like world grid theory and ley lines, which we talked about on episodes 39 and 40. We talked about Cholula, and we talked about how the Earth is a D20 and ley lines and all that kind of stuff. We've covered those topics already. So, but then I'm like, geomancy is a way older word, and I know that has more significance. So here's the quick for people who did not listen to episodes 39 and 40, but basically ley lines.
You should, by the way.
You should.
Great episode.
But here's the TLDL. Ley lines are basically lines around the earth that in 20th century Europe, people thought meant that they demarked where earth energies are and that they were guides to spacecraft. But archaeologists and scientists have pointed out that it's pseudo-history, it's pseudo-archaeology. There's nothing to it. It was put forward in the 1920s by a guy named Alfred Watkins, was rejected by the archaeological establishment, but in the 1960s, nonetheless, it became popular, especially in Britain, and especially among countercultural people who belong to something called the Earth Mysteries movement, which is sort of an idea that there are, special powers in the earth that are that show up in things like this.
Yeah.
This led to a sort of cottage industry of people called ley hunters who would try and find ley lines across the landscape. But there's no evidence that these ley lines are an actual phenomenon, and that these lines, typically, if they were of any actual thing, they were usually trade pathways or ceremonial lines. But for the most part, they're just lines drawn between points, because in Europe, there's a lot of historical points. So you could just draw a line and connect anything, really.
Right, exactly. There's just a lot of important historical things. And so when you draw something between 2 points, we tend to call that a line.
Yes. And as we talked about it, we found ley lines, like to sort of make a joke about it. Some Londoners found the pizza ley lines in London because they were able to draw lines through the city where all of the London pizza restaurants were and stuff like that. So So like ley lines just turned out to be our phenomenon. It's constellations, but with stuff on the ground. And there was no real scientific basis to it, especially because, as we saw in the episode, that they were connecting things that were built like hundreds, sometimes even thousands of years separated from each other.
Right. There's no way that they would have been able there wasn't really any planning necessarily between everything.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's like basically what they were trying to call geomancy, but geomancy is a real thing. And that's what I want to get to, because there is something called geomancy, but it's not just the concept of ley lines and world grid theory. Geomancy is a form of what's called divination.
Okay.
Now, do you know what divination is?
Divination, divining, divination. Is it like prophecy?
Yeah, prophecy is a form of divination.
All right.
It's basically an attempt to use magic of some kind to answer a question, whether it be about the future, whether it be about something that's going on. Divination is probably the most common ones that you would think of are fortune telling, tarot card readings, reading the bones. Those kinds of things.
That's one that's not used as often. Everyone's doing tarot cards these days. I need more people to read bones.
Yeah, we need more bones, more tea leaves.
Yes.
So
that's what I should do.
Yeah, because you're a tea guy, as we established.
When I'm done brewing my tea, I'll just read some tea leaves.
Exactly. So it does seem, though, what's interesting is that every culture has had some form of divination. Some examples would be in ancient Greece, you had oracles and seers who, I hesitate to say this because I imagine is going to end up on some sort of correction episode, but I seem to recall it was about like young people getting high off of like veins of natural gas and then spouting stuff that would end up being prophecies. But I imagine that that's just some Discovery Channel construction that's not actually true. But there were people called oracles in ancient Greece, or seers, who would be able to tell the future. In the Middle Ages, it was also a thing, especially around the world. In Europe, it was frowned upon because a lot of Christian leaders thought that divination was a type of magic, and magic was generally considered
bad.
But even
Can't
then,
do it.
Yeah.
Can I say they were growing up in like a Christian environment? They were very strict on that Harry Potter was bad, and they were right, but not for the reasons they thought they were right.
That's true. The strange alliance between the hardcore Christians and decent people is the disliking Harry Potter, but for completely different reasons.
Different reasons.
If anything, now that those people who are probably against Harry Potter like 15 years ago are probably now fiercely defending it because of the way things have changed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, like, did you ever see that Jesus Camp documentary?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, terrifying documentary about a bunch of kids at like a hardcore Pentecostal like summer camp. But there's a part where the main preacher there, she like rails against the wizardry and warlocks of Harry Potter. I'm wondering what her takes on Harry Potter are today, and I imagine that she has a much more favorable view of it in the last, 2 years or so.
I just like J.K. Rowling's other books. The ones where there was like, what was it, like the trans serial killer or something like that? I don't know. Horrible.
I read one that was like about basically about poor people being bad, and the only thing that's worse than poor people are fat people, and the villain is just like a really fat guy, and then he dies of a heart attack at the end.
Fantastic.
Casual Vacancy, that was what it was called.
Good stuff.
Awful
author.
But yeah, divination still, even though, we talk about, Europe was thoroughly Christianized at a certain point, but a lot of pagan folk magics and stuff like that still continued around. We've talked about that in the head binding episode, where that was still practiced as like a sort of pre-Christian ritual. Mm-hmm. And, it's just like part of pre-Christian magic and divination and stuff like that has all been part of European folklore. But it is a global phenomenon, and pretty much every culture has it. Muslims had a whole form of divination that included geomancy, astrology, and interpreting dreams. In fact, geomancy, as the Europeans know it, came from the Islamic world, like almost every discovery, it seems.
Yeah.
Divination also was big in Mesoamerican religious life, with astrology and seers and stuff like that being a big part of them. Astrology, that's another form of divination, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Another thing that you might find...
What's your sign? Have we talked about this? What's your sign?
Sagittarius. Sagittarius.
So like December, January?
End of November.
See, I don't actually know then. I know that Emily's a Sagittarius, but she's like right on the cusp, so I don't know.
I think I might be too. I think I might be right at the beginning of it, but I am my birthday is November 27th. For all of you who are planning my gifts in advance as far early as
right.
April.
You're right. Emily's not on the cusp of it. She's right in the middle. I always forget that they're like sort of at the end. November, December, that's Sagittarius. Do you know your sun and your rising and your moon? I don't know any of those things.
No, I don't know any of those.
I'm an Adderall rising
you're
and Alexapro moon.
There you go. Another version of divination you might find is something called Tayam in India and Nepal, in which a person invites a Hindu god or goddess to answer a question by basically possessing their bodies.
Oh.
There's also forms of divination practiced in Japan that is sort of a mix of Western and Chinese astrology. Things like feng shui, tarot cards, and physiognomy are like a thing in Japan. Japan has like taken a whole bunch of these different like divination methods, and it's like a real like popular thing there, to the point where they do astrology like personality typing for a bunch of stuff. The biggest one in Japan that I think is very interesting is blood typing. Blood typing, like there's a big thing in Japan, but I think it's also a thing in Korea as well, where your blood type is supposed to say a lot about your personality and possibly tell your future and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what my blood type is.
I know mine. It's A positive because I donate blood regularly.
Because you're a positive person.
Aw. But yeah, like there's also, you have physical characteristics and numerology, all are like popular in Japan. There's Japanese tarot cards you can buy that have like pop culture figures and historical figures on them. It's a whole thing. Japan, we could do an entire episode on Japanese divination practices.
I would love to.
That's not what we're talking about today. There's also something called Po, which is a divination practice in Taiwan that uses crescent-shaped blocks, or Kiowa, which is a more serious type of divination done in Taiwan that uses a wooden chair. Another place where divination
to do what? What do you use? How do you use the chair?
Let's go on a journey and find out.
Because you can't just sit in it. I don't want anyone accidentally divining anything.
All right. A small wooden chair, and around the sides of the chair are small pieces of wood that can move up and down in their sockets. This causes a clicking sound when the chair is moved in any way. Two men hold this chair by its legs before an altar while incense is being burned, and the deity is invited to descend onto the chair. It's seen that it is in the chair by an onset of motion. Eventually, the chair crashes onto a table prepared with wood chips and burlap. The characters on the table are then traced, and these are said to be written by the deity who possessed the chair. These characters are then interpreted for the devotees.
Dang.
Yeah.
Stuff's cool.
There is a lot of cool stuff. And
there's so many cool things around the world. Has anyone ever thought about that?
That's not even cool. That's not even getting into things like the I Ching or all sorts of other forms of divination. It's a pretty big practice in a lot of African folk traditions that still carry to this day. The most prominent one probably being the religion Serer, which is a religion in Senegal today that has divination being a like central tenet of the faith. So divination is, and likely will still continue to be a big part of the human experience, because we love to categorize people and draw patterns about our future based on interpreting different symbols and stuff like that. It seems that it's a universal part of probably just apophenia, like we talked about last week, of us finding patterns in meaningless data and using that to try and predict the future.
Yeah.
And geomancy is part of that. Geomancy is a part of divination that uses markings on the ground or soil, rock, and sand to tell its part. It's because geomancy is part of what are called the classical elements. Probably these: earth, water, air, fire. And as far as I can tell, all of these have forms of magic associated with them in different cultures that also have divination as part of them.
Earth, water, air, fire. We're back at bending.
Bending, yeah. Or ether.
I did see Aether. I saw your tweet the other day that ACAB includes Toph, and that does make me sad.
That does. Toph is an amazing character.
But
I'm actually playing in a tabletop role-playing game right now that's set in the Avatar universe, and my character is an earthbender, so it hurts even special hard. But the word geomancy comes from Greek, which Makes sense. Lot of like, geography is a word that's about the study of the earth, and most names of scientific fields come from Greek, so geomancy makes sense.
Makes sense.
It was a popular form. Actually, it was one of the most popular forms of divination in Africa and Europe, especially during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. But in Renaissance magic, geomancy was classified as something called one of the 7 forbidden arts. So geomancy was considered like dark black magic alongside necromancy, hydromancy, aeromancy, pyromancy, chiromancy, which is palm reading, and scapulomancy.
Whoa.
I gotta figure out what that one is. That sounds like fun.
That's like isn't that like a muscle? Your scapula?
It is. That's what the bones. It uses your scapular bones.
Oh, it's a bone thing, not a muscle.
A divination by observation of a shoulder blade, usually as blotched or cracked from a fire. Cool.
Whoa. Bone magic.
Yeah.
Back to the bones. So those are all the forbidden ones that you listed?
They were considered the 7 forbidden arts in Renaissance era Europe. But
the 8th forbidden art? Crocheting. We just don't like it.
It's too much math, too much graphs.
We don't want it.
So basically, it was a popular form of divination, so much so that it was considered evil. But geomancy has like a very specific way that you do things, and it has formalized. So what you do is you have these 16 figures that have some sort of randomized way of putting them, like of scattering them. And what they do is create different lines and marks that you can then cross-reference with a book to try and determine what like your future is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes you use astrology to sort of augment the results. So there are 16 different random marks you get with 2 points marked off at a time until one of the 2 points remain. The leftover points form the first 4 figures, which create the basis for the remaining figures. The figures are then entered into a specialized table called the shield chart, which provides a visual guide for interpreting it. And skilled geomancers can observe the chart and interpret the meanings of the figures based on where they place in the chart, the numerical significance of the total points, and the similarities produced by added figures. There are different methods for interpreting the chart, such as looking at the total sum of all the points in the 16 figures within the shield chart to determine the speed of the resolution. But to this point where how complex this gets, because it's like got a lot of like recursion and a lot of like randomness involved, there are as many as 65,536 possible charts that can come out from reinterpreting or doing a standard geomancy practice.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Geomancers in Europe tend to use the house chart, which has 12 astrological houses, and assigns figures from the chart to the houses in the house chart. So geomancers often will note down aspects between these figures and pass them on to other houses, and especially ones that make aspects to other significators. It's extremely complicated. It's been around for a long time, so it's been developed into a real art form. And this has been, and also in more recent times, has become more like astrology has played a larger role in it, I guess you should say.
That's interesting.
So you would use your relationship between your geomancy results and your zodiac to figure out different parts and link different parts of your body.
Okay.
And then there's like planetary spirit and intelligences and genii that are all put into it. So even then you have things called judges, which is that, so of those 16 points, only figures that have an even amount of points become what are called judges. And each of the judges has 8,192 charts associated with it.
This is a lot.
It's extremely
to keep track of.
Yeah, geomancers are extremely skilled at extremely complicated nonsense. It's intense.
Yeah.
And even then, a lot of traditional practitioners can figure out a lot just by like vibing off of it and looking at it. So that's a lot. It kind of fell out of favor, but then it came back in the 19th century when there was this resurgence in interest in the occult.
Mm-hmm.
And also it has mythological associations. There's an Arabic text that talks about how one philosopher named Idris saw the angel Jabril in a dream, and that's apparently the legend about how geomancy was taught. So Jabril is the Muslim version of the archangel Gabriel.
Gabriel. I was gonna say it sounds like Gabriel.
Yeah.
But which one's cooler? If you had to pick sides religion wise, which one's cooler, Tristan?
Ooh.
Which angel is not full religion? Which angel is cooler?
Jabril or Gabriel?
Yes, between the two of them.
I don't have any
realize
friends.
Whatever answer you pick will make people upset.
I don't have any friends named Gabriel. I do have a friend named Jabril, so I think Jabril will win on that front.
All right, points for Jabril. Well done.
I remember Jabril because we once met up at VidCon, and he was late to our meeting because he found a random corner of the convention center and took a nap. Cool guy. I love it.
That's good.
Yeah, so this is that. But that's classical geomancy as it's practiced mostly in like the Middle East and in Europe. Again, super complicated thing that uses like math and a bit of like numerology and like and this like complex series of like correlating a bunch of different things. I say it's complicated, but the I Ching, which is a sort of version of divination that's done in East Asia with sticks, is also pretty complicated for the exact same reasons. Basically taking a sort of semi-randomized set of different combinations of symbols and then having a big complex chart to show what those symbols mean. There are some forms of what you might call geomancy that isn't classical geomancy, but it is still using different earth or landscape type things in order to either improve your current situation in a sort of like a supernatural way or to try and tell the future. Big ones that come forward are something in India, which is called Vastu Shastra, which is this idea in Hindu and Buddhism that basically is like about a sacred way of designing and doing the geometry of architecture. It's like a way of building buildings that is like proper with like different ways about like aligning with the earth and everything like that.
That's pretty cool.
Another version of it is in Kazakhstan, which is called Kumalak, which is a way to, instead of divination, it's more of like a geomantic way of talking to your ancestors or talking to spiritual guides. Geomancy often shows up in Korea they use the topography of the land to determine future events or the strength of a dynasty in an area. And another type of version of this that's typically called geomancy is a Chinese art called feng shui, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of at this point.
That. Yeah.
The reason it's called a form of geomancy is because Christian missionaries translated feng shui into geomancy, which means that now if you like look up stuff on geomancy, feng shui is like completely like it's in the same part of it, which is basically this idea.
Okay.
Feng shui is its own thing and it's an all intricate art, but it is essentially an idea of arranging rooms and building buildings in a way that has good chi, just sort of like an energy source that's got less to do with yin and yang. And I'm delving into a lot of stuff that I do not know a whole lot about, so I'm going to step lightly, but that's to know that feng shui is often called a form of geomancy, but it's not really.
Gotcha. I believe you.
Also, geomancy shows up a lot in fantasy literature, often for magic that is about controlling the earth or metal or crystals, which is where you get into your Avatar earthbender people. But one of the most popular versions of geomancy that I didn't get into is a sort of folk version of geomancy that's been big in Europe for thousands of years and also shows up a lot in Ancient Aliens. And that is dowsing.
Hey, I know this. We talked about this really early on. It comes up here and there every once in a while. This was like a somewhat new thing to me when we first started this podcast, and now I'm all about it. I'm all about dowsing.
So for anybody who knows about Looney Tunes, you'll probably have an idea of what dowsing is. So dowsing is this idea of being able to find like usually water, but also it's been used to try and find metal ore or different types of resources in the earth by using different types of equipment, typically using dowsing rods, which can sometimes be two metal rods that you hold like this, and then if they point a certain way, will point you towards what you're looking for, or more often today, a pendulum that you hold over top and it will like move in a direction that you think. Or the most common Looney Tunes one, which is a sort of Y-shaped stick that will guide you towards the water that you're looking for.
Yes.
There's been several studies done on dowsing that have shown that it is indistinguishable from random chance. It was is considered a form of divination. It was banned by the Catholic Church. Martin Luther was also against it. The idea is that the divining rod is somehow affected by emanations or something from the substance you're looking for, but has never really turned into anything. It's probably due to the ideomotor effect, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I feel like it probably should be a topic for its own episode when there's definitely going to be a better time for let's talk about dowsing than this episode.
Yeah. We'll get into it. We need a whole episode about dowsing.
So then the question is, what the hell's going on? What is this? What is this nonsense again? Well, the reason why Ancient Aliens is talking about geomancy and a misinterpretation of geomancy to mean just some form of nebulous energy, you have to know that we're going back to the New Age movement.
We're always there. We're always 1 foot in.
Yeah.
A one step in on the New Age movement.
Yeah, whenever you're talking about misinterpreting an ancient art as something that has to do with a nebulous thing that is whatever Ancient Aliens wants it to be, you're almost definitely going to be into New Age stuff because New Age movement is basically a spiritual movement that started arising in the 1970s. But the problem with it is that it's extremely eclectic. It has no real there's no dogma, there's no systematic stuff to it, so it's hard to really find an answer because basically the idea behind the New Age movement is that everybody has their own sort of constellation of spiritual beliefs that's just pieced together through whatever bits and bobs of cultures and religions that you feel like, or just different forms of esotericism. So New Age movement has some spiritualist stuff, it's got some theosophy stuff, and oftentimes also touches on UFO stuff. And there's a lot of New Agey UFO crossover in that space. And oftentimes, like astrology and other forms of divination, geomancy also plays a role to many New Agers. And they connect it to sort of they connected it with this ley line, which is also another New Age adjacent type thing. And together, they basically conflated it into a production of what they just call energy.
Just energy.
Yeah, which
just some energy.
Well, here's the thing. So they call it energy in a lot of New Age circles, and you probably heard it, and you probably think of energy through this, but it's basically trying to conflate energy, like the thing that's powering your computer right now, and what I called in all caps with spaces between the letters, energy, in an esoteric sense. So
the
basically,
concept of energy,
vibe energy or life force or whatever. So basically, it seems that what Ancient Aliens is trying to argue is that alien spaceships are being powered by vibe energy, ley line energy. So somehow you can turn energy into watts and power. Oh,
so that you can take energy that's just sort of all around us, the energy.
Yeah.
And then you can turn that into, it can power my phone.
I guess Ancient Aliens seems to be conflating those two terms anyway.
All right.
But it's energy is a big phenomenon. It's probably adopted from ideas like life force or chi or elan vital, which show up in various different religious movements because a lot of religious movements criticize the New Age movement for just picking and choosing stuff from their cultural heritage and just adopting it without, especially Native American stuff. But I think that this one, it was appropriation of chi in the kind of concept of Eastern, Eastern spirituality.
Gotcha.
And that shows up because David Childress in the episode when talking about this,
love him,
refers to world grid theory in this as almost like acupuncture for the planet, which should have just said everything you needed to know at that point, right? Using these building a pyramid on top of a ley line is like acupuncture for the Earth's energy forces that you can siphon it out and power your spaceships or whatever.
Yes. We do need to turn the pyramid upside down though, because that's where the pointy part is at the top, and we need to put that into the earth. I've had acupuncture before. Have you had acupuncture before?
I have not. It's not a thing. But
I won it in a contest when I went on the cruise last year. I just won it in a raffle to get a free acupuncture session on board, and I was like, well, yeah, it's free, I'm gonna do it. I will say this, I'm quite positive No, I'm not positive. I just don't know if any science exists around it. But I will say it was, and maybe it was because I was also on a cruise, and maybe it was because I wasn't paying for it, but it was relaxing and I liked it. So,
well, I mean, if it was successful at being relaxing, but
would I do it again if it was free?
The general, I mean, acupuncture has a long history in Chinese traditional medicine, but it's essentially using pins to unlock blockages in your chakras and stuff like that. So it's again like
I would call it a spicy ASMR quality to it, where it was a little painful, but I did like it.
I'm sure, like, I don't actually know what like the numbers are, but like I don't think it's probably one of those things that's a decent way to like relax yourself, and you might get some like, you might get some like placebo effect health benefits.
Oh, sure.
But for the most part, like don't do it to try and like cure your cancer or something like that.
No, don't do that.
But if it's
free and you're on a cruise,
sure.
Yeah, man. Go for it.
Why not? The worst you can do is get an infection from getting tons of needles put in your face. If it's not a credible place.
Well, we were out at sea, so there was no laws. So
perfect.
What could I have done?
Yeah. The thing is that like there's also things like energy medicine that tries to manipulate energy. Reiki, I think, is one of the more hilarious ones, which is a form of alternative medicine that involves like basically waving your hands over people.
Now that's some ASMR stuff.
Yeah.
Love that.
Some situations also involve something called negative energy, which is the kind of energy that attracts ghosts or demons.
Oh. Wait, so you want the ghosts and demons?
No, it's bad. It's bad energy.
Oh, that bad energy. I get you. I see what you're saying. I thought you were like, yeah, this one will attract demons. That's great. I need some demons inside me.
Yeah. If you ever find yourself watching like a ghost hunter show or anything that has to do with haunted houses, very often the people who consider themselves ghost hunters or psychics who specialize in like finding demons or ghosts, they typically talk about like the bad energy of places. So it's sort of like that.
Yeah.
Again, it's a weird way to look at it, because that basically energy in a new age sense has infinite interpretations that really don't have any real meaning, because energy has a real, like it's a real word that has a real definition, which is it's essentially a way of saying measurable work capability. Because energy is basically something's capacity to perform work. It's not it's not like a glowing cloud of vibes.
And so my energy is at 0 before I've had my coffee.
Well, really for example, kind of going back to caffeine doesn't really give you energy. It just blocks receptors in your brain that tell you you're tired.
Yeah, it actually makes things worse for me, because I will still be super drowsy, but my body will never let me sleep. I'll just be jittery, but I'm like, but my brain doesn't want to do anything.
Yeah. What is energy is like food, because food has calories in it. If you want to think, like, the thing is, energy is a measurable thing. It's measured in calories.
Yes.
So does that mean that like the negative energy of ghosts can be like turned into a viable power source? Man, now
ghost power.
Actually, that's actually the plot of the RPG Blades in the Dark, where they use ghosts as like an energy source.
Ghost power. Yeah. I mean, what else are they doing? Nothing. They're just sitting around.
It's true.
Put them to work.
But essentially what we're talking about here is they
can pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
Oh, there you go. We got it.
We
got there. That was the right answer.
Yay.
So to kind of put this all together, what Ancient Aliens was trying to do is trying to take this sort of new age concept of energy, conflate it with actual energy, which is, power and electricity and stuff.
Yes.
And then so basically to try and make a claim that UFOs and people in ancient times were tapping the vibes, the spiritual life force of the planet to turn into actual measurable electrical power.
Yeah, baby.
Then they called that geomancy, even though what they're talking about is a reinterpretation of ley lines and world grid theory. But geomancy is a real term that is a reference to a form of divination that involves different symbols and mathematics and astrology and all that kind of stuff.
So they're trying to say this thing that doesn't even feel like they're either mixing stuff up, or they're getting it wrong on purpose, or they're just like, I don't know. This is a very confusing one to me.
It fits very hard on the new age thing, which is they just took a bunch of things that they liked the sound of, just conflated a bunch of stuff because maybe there was some similar words, and then they just kind of rolled with it because in new age circles, your spiritual ideas or your ideas about how the world works can just be whatever your vibes say. So energy. So I guess people in the past were humpcatting their way through their problems.
Humpcatting? I don't know what that means.
It's the kind of sports that you do when you're too energetic for regular sports because of power thirst.
From energy.
Yeah.
I get it. We're back. Gosh, I haven't seen that in so long.
So
you have a much stronger memory of that than I do.
I have. I say my mom has a. My mom's memory is like a bear trap. Nothing ever escapes. And I have inherited that to an extent. I have a ridiculously good memory for weird details like that because I probably haven't seen the Power First thing in like 10 years either. But I'll remember that,
that's so funny.
You'll have 200, what's it called? You'll have 400 babies.
You'll have so many babies. 400 babies.
For all of you people listening who were not born in the 20th century.
Do not look it up.
This is a meme from like the ancient internet, from like when Scott and I were like high school age.
It's probably so problematic.
Yeah, probably. I think there's some stuff about
energy.
I think there's a whole thing about Kenyans that I think is not great. So,
you're right.
I think it's I think it's just a reference to the fact that they run fast, and Kenya is a country that has produced a whole lot of really good runners. So, I guess I don't know if that's terrible, but
I don't know. That's geomancy. It has nothing to do with energy.
But yeah, that's geomancy. Power thirst is geomancy. You know what? Using ancient aliens logic, power thirst is energy. It is menergy. It is geomancy. Geomancy energy drink.
That'd be good. We could start that.
Try geomancy energy drink. It puts the man in geomancy.
You know what we do as we're like playing around with this idea of like merch, like having the glow in the dark T-shirts. We should have a water bottle that's like geomancy.
A fake geomancy energy drink.
Like energy drink geomancy water bottle.
I'd buy that for $1. That and the it's probably not aliens glow in the dark logo shirt. Those are good. If you have any other
good ideas,
if you have any insane episode references that you think should be made into merchandise that actually people pay money for, you can tell us about it at @probsnotaliens on Twitter.
You sure can. And on Instagram as well. I'm trying to post stuff there, especially as we have pictures of stuff. This episode didn't have too many pictures, but maybe I'll do some
geomancy symbols and stuff.
Maybe I'll just do some geomancy. Maybe I'll just post a picture of Toph. Who knows? You can also follow my YouTube channel. It's called Step Back. It's great. I do a lot of cool stuff over there. It's the best YouTube channel on the planet. No, wait, sorry. That's Tristan's. Tristan's YouTube channel is called Step Back, and it's the best one on the planet.
Yeah, you can go to stepbackhistory.com. My latest video is on the Iraq War, but I should have a video coming out about the conspiracy. I'm debunking another conspiracy theory, this time cultural Marxism. Whoa. So have fun with that.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. But Scott, I heard that you also dabble in the YouTube arts.
Trying to. As I talked about in the last episode, I'm definitely trying to get in. I'm trying to do more little videos. I do a lot of big, long ones that are like really heavily scripted and researched and very highly produced, I like to think anyway. And I just want to do stuff where I sit at my desk and I just talk about something that I'm interested in and bring back those vibes, Sweet. I like it.
Yeah.
Just be more chill, not worry about things. I'm never going to die. What even is death? You can also find there are many great ways you can support this podcast that we do. One of them is by signing up for Nebula, nebula.tv/probably-not-aliens.
Mm-hmm.
It's where you can listen to ad-free versions of this podcast, as well as they're a week early.
Yeah, so if you want next week's episode on wormholes and teleportation, you can do so right now.
You can listen to it right now.
Unless you're listening to this on Nebula. Then you have to wait a week. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can't do that unless you found some sort of time travel wormhole.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, anyway, you can also write us reviews on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us out. I always say this. I get emails every time someone writes us a nice review on Apple Podcasts, and I read them, and they're very good. So thank you to everyone who's been doing that. And also just telling your friends about the show. That's the best way, the biggest way, the most important way, maybe, I would say. Who knows? That this show grows just by word of mouth. So we really appreciate it. We're growing good, growing fast. Yep. I love it. This year's been great for us. So we appreciate everyone.
My dad recently retired. And when he was over at my house on the weekend, I was trying hard to be like, hey, you would like this podcast. My YouTube channel,
it's a dad podcast.
My dad was into UFO stuff. He was a big X-Files fan in the 90s. So I'm like, Dad, watch this.
This podcast is for dads.
This is the Dadcast.
And that's it. This is the Dad Podcast. Manergy.
The place that you can send them is to probsnotaliens.com.
Probsnotaliens.com. It's got links to all the different places you can listen to it, this show. We should be pretty much everywhere, but that's the best place you can send people. So go do that. Until next time, my name is Scott Nicewander.
I'm Tristan Johnson, and the truth is out there.
Oh, he's rolling some dice.
The fates say probably?
Rolling bones.
It was just a handful of D&D dice, but I was trying to pretend it was a geomancy thing.
Roll some bones.
I don't have any bones. They have that D20 made of human bone.
You have so many bones inside of you, Tristan. You can sacrifice some
for the content.
For the content.